Laricium. I don't know. I don't know. Hello and welcome back. Today I am doing the Mistborn book tag. I was tagged by Trinity over at Portable Magic to do this, but the tag was created by Patrick Ryan Book Reviews. I will have both of them linked below so you guys can go check their pages out. But that's how this little tag came into creation. Now, I'm going to start out by saying, you guys have probably never once heard me talk about Brandon Sanderson on my channel. And that is because I've actually only read one piece of work by Brandon Sanderson, and that is the White Sand graphic novels. And I thought it was bad. I've never gotten around to reading anything else by him, and it'll probably be a long time before I do. Like, I own Mistborn, the first book. The Final Empire, I think is what it's called. But yeah, I just thought I like the questions. It's not my fault that it, coincides with Brandon Sanderson. I liked the questions and I wanted to answer them, and I was tagged in it, so I thought it would be fun to do. So if I say any of these elements, metals, whatever these things are, whatever these magic pieces are, because I have it all written down here, if I say them wrong, I'm sorry. I'm not familiar with it. So with that said, let's just go ahead and let's jump into this tag. First up is Iron, a book you pulled forward on your TBR. So for the most part, when it comes to my TBR, it is a never-ending changing cycle because I am a huge mood reader. So I can create a TBR and then 2 days later throw it out the window. So I'm constantly moving things forward and shifting things back. So right now, in this exact moment of filming this video, I have moved up Legend of Tal book 2, A Queen's Command by J.D.L. Russell. I just finished A King's Bargain, which is book 1. Like, I literally just finished it before filming this video, and I want to know what happens next. I was planning on reading something else after it to take a break from it because I tend to not binge series, but I was like, you know what? I need to know what happens next because I'm a little miffed about that ending, sir. So this is the one that I have currently just pulled forward on my TBR. Next we have Steel, a book you keep pushing back on your TBR. For this one, I am going with Empire of Silence by Christopher Braccio. Now, when this first book initially came out all those years ago, I don't know how long it was, but when it first initially came out, I picked it up from the library, I read the first 50 pages, and I fell in love, and I was like, I need to buy this. So I bought it. I got this guy for $8. Sorry, you guys can't find it for that cheap anymore, but that is what I did. I found it for $8. But I have since been pushing it back and pushing it back and pushing it back, and I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that it's become really hyped, and a lot of people talk about it. A lot of people love it, and now I kind of have like that fear of going into it. Like, I started out loving it. Those first 50 pages, I was really in love with it. And then when I got a hold of it, I was in the middle of a bunch of other stuff, and then it just like gradually fell to the back. But within like the last like 2 years, I feel like this has really gained a lot of traction, and a lot of people are talking about it. It's everybody's favorite sci-fi, and I'm like, and so I just keep pushing it back and pushing it back. I do plan on getting to it. Honestly, at this point, I think I'm just gonna wait till it's completely done and solid and out, and then just going through the whole thing at once instead of having to wait for the next one. But yeah, this is the one that just keeps getting pushed back. Up next, we have Tin, a book you read because the cover caught your attention. Now, this is one of those questions where I could say everything on my bookshelves because I am a cover girl, okay? The first thing to always grab my attention when it comes to a book is the cover, followed by the title, and then maybe the synopsis if I care to read it, which isn't very often. So if you have a very compelling cover, your girl is gonna want to pick it up. And I'm very attracted to illustrated covers more so than words. So, if it's just like the title and a bunch of like decorative stuff around it, I don't want anything. It's gonna take me a lot longer to get to those. But I did go ahead and I did decide to pick out one of the many books on my shelves where I fell in love with the cover and just had to have it. And I'm actually going to go with the Compendium of Penrick's Progress by Lois McMaster Bujold. God, her name is a tongue twister for me sometimes. But this is the first 3 books in the Penrick and Desdemona series. And this was the very first time that I had ever even heard of this series, because Baen Books is doing these compendiums where they're putting all, because they're all novella length, so they're putting them all into these little compendiums. And I remember seeing this on the shelf and I was just like, that is gorgeous and I need to know more. And so this was definitely all based on the cover, and I had to have it. I will say though, the 3rd compendium they put together, I don't know, the art style went so left field. This is the 2nd compendium. Like, that looks great. Like, these are just, they grab your eye, they pull you in. The 3rd one, I don't know what, they picked a different artist and things went downhill. So I have not bought the 3rd compendium because I really don't like the cover on it. But I have the rest of the series in single volume, so I'm not missing out. Next, we have Pewter, a massive tome you've enjoyed. I'm actually going to go with one that I just recently finished this year, and that is Ordinary Monsters by J.M. Muro. This guy is 600 something pages long, so he is a big massive tome. I guess depending on what we all consider a massive tome, I consider anything over 600 pages a massive tome, because I have some on my shelves that are like 1,000 pages. So yeah, but this one is the most recent one I read. I really liked it. Had like those gothic vibes to it, and then on top of that, like the way the powers are brought into story, like it gives you these very X-Men vibes. There's an institution where these kids gotta go, and just so many elements that I really, really liked about it, and I'm definitely looking forward to the next book. I do have a review for it on the channel if you guys are interested, and I'll link it below. Then we have Zinc, a book that made you emotional. Now, I could say everything. I like when my books bring me to tears. That's what I actually want when I read a book. I want to be devastated. I want to cry. I want to feel those emotions, because I do think it's one of the harder emotions to really invoke in writing. And it's one of those things where not every author can hit it just right. Those are my personal opinions. So that is what I want. Whenever I go into a series, that is what I want to feel. So there have been a lot that have done this to me, because I'm also a very sensitive little girl, okay? But I'm actually going to go with the one that still sticks with me till today. And if I think about it just a little bit too hard, it'll upset me. It'll make me cry. It was a very emotional, devastating moment for me. And that's Bloody Rose by Nicholas Ames. Like, if you've read this and it brought you to tears, you know exactly what scene I'm talking about. Just the beauty of how Ames had put this into the book, all the different point of views, the perspectives on it, and the irony of how it all happened. Like, I just remember reading it and just completely breaking down, sobbing, crying, closing the book. Just like, my daughter came in and was like, Mommy, are you okay? Because she was much younger at the time. Are you okay, Mommy? Why are you crying? And I'm like, it's just my book, it's okay. And it has stuck with me to this day. It is still one of the best emotionally triggering scenes that I have like ever read in a book. And I just like I said, like if I think about it and talk about it too much, it starts to get to me. So I'm gonna go ahead and set it aside now. Then we have Brass, a cozy comfort read. Now I know like cozy is like the big thing right now, and I'm not like too big on the idea of cozy. They're kind of boring to me. They're just a little too low stakes for my taste, and I tend to get like very sleepy when I read them. But I'm actually going to go with The Last Unicorn by Peter S. Bagel. I consider this cozy, and it's definitely a comfort read for me. It's one of my favorite stories of all time. I absolutely love the movie. I will watch it at the drop of the hatch. I actually just watched it last month because it was on Hulu, and I was like, I may own this on DVD, but it's on Hulu. Click. But this is definitely, I probably have to say, one of like my biggest comfort reads. It just invokes just something in me that just, makes me feel calm, even though that there are scenes in it that are, you know, a bit more lively and action-packed and everything, because like there is the Red Bull, you know, we do have to worry about that aspect and everything, but there's just something about it that just creates this like very cozy atmosphere for me. So that is the one that I've decided to go with for this one. Next we have Copper, a guilty pleasure. So this is the one question on here that I couldn't figure out an answer for, because I used to, maybe 2 years ago, consider romance books a guilty pleasure for myself, but with this year I have decided to actually just take the plunge and discover romance on my own terms, look for something that works for me, and I realized it's not a guilty pleasure to like a genre of books. It's just, I like them, I enjoy them. Like, I love middle grade, I love historical fiction, I love fantasy, sci-fi, and while I don't love romance, it's definitely something that I'm slowly starting to find that I can find books that I can enjoy in there. So I can't think of anything that I would consider a guilty pleasure for enjoying, because I'm trying to have the mindset of I enjoy it because I like it and because I love it, and there's nothing wrong with that. So sorry, I don't have an answer for that one, guys. Next we have Bronze, a buddy read. So I'm gonna start out by saying I do not do buddy reads anymore. I've had nothing but negative experiences with buddy reads. So there is only one person that I will do a buddy read with, and it's because I've never had a negative experience of doing it with them, and that would be my best friend. And we buddy read romance books together. Specifically, there are 2 series that we have specifically read from start till what's currently released, because they're both continuing on in roughly different types of ways. So we have the Crusty Cole's Immortals After Dark, which has a new book coming out at the end of this year and another one next year. And then we have Ruby Dixon and her Ice Planet Barbarian series. This one is more so, she has like another spin-off coming for it, and we're anticipating that one. I think she's got like one coming out at the end of the year for it. So these are the pretty much like the only things that I on a regular basis will buddy read. And if there is a romance series that me and my best friend are both interested in, we will buddy read those ones together. But outside of that, I do not buddy read with anyone because I've had nothing but negative experiences of doing buddy reads, so I don't do it anymore. Okay, so now it's here, we're gonna start getting to ones where I might be pronouncing these wrong, so bear with me, please. ATM? A book you read even though the ending was spoiled. For this, I'm going to go with the YA series The Raven Boys by Maggie Stiefvater. This was one of those ones where it was, when I initially came across it, it was the big hype, and everybody, all the fans about it were talking about it, making art of it, and pretty much every single book was spoiled in a different way. But I was interested, and I wanted to read it for myself to see how a lot of it played out, because while a good majority of the story had already been spoiled, there were still things that hadn't been spoiled. But this is going to be the closest one, because other than that, I pretty much, if I'm interested in a book, I will avoid anything to do with it because I do not want to be spoiled by it. But this one, it was, you know how ACOTAR is kind of like shoved down our throats on a regular basis? Like, I feel like I've read those books and I've never read them. I've never touched them. And yet I feel like I've read them because I know way too much information about those books. That was almost in the same realm of what The Raven Boys was going through when it was at its peak of its hype. And there was enough being spoiled, but enough to where my experience reading it wasn't completely ruined. So that's my answer for that one. This was a great series, though. You guys should read it. I had a lot of fun with it, and the audiobooks are fantastic. Next up, we have Cadmium, a book that caused you to lose track of time. And I have picked the middle grade book, The Miraculous by Jess Redman. I remember coming home from the library with this one and reading it, and the next thing I knew, I was finished reading it. It was like 8 o'clock at night, and I was like, what just happened? I also remember me being a hot mess reading this because this book is emotional, okay? It deals with a lot of trauma. But it was fantastic to the point where I bought it. I had to have this on my shelf. I was just like, oh my god, like I'm gonna read it again, and I'm gonna cry again when I read it. But yeah, this was the one where I read it and then I was like, where'd the day go? Next we have Bendalloy. These two words together do not work in my brain. Bendalloy. We're gonna go with that. A book you read faster than expected. And that is Dry by Neil Shusterman and Jared Shusterman. This was, again, another library read that I had picked up, and I picked it up for silly reasons. I picked it up because the main character's name is Alyssa. That's my name. She lives in California. I live in California. And they were going through a drought. We go through droughts all the time. So I was like, it's the story of my life. And I remember coming home with it and starting it. I read it in about 2 days. It was a lot faster than I expected because I do struggle reading YA books. So I figured, oh, I'm probably going to struggle reading this one. It's probably going to take like 4 days, maybe 4 to 5 days. And it took me like 2. I read it a lot faster than I expected. And I actually ended up really loving it. And I was like, this is a really good book and I like it. So I'm glad I took the dive on picking it up from the library. And now I have it in my collection because I really liked it. And I was like, I'm going to read that again. It's my life story. Minus some changes. Next we have Gold, a book you might have liked in different circumstances. So for this one, I'm going to go with Warrior of the Wild by Tracy Levenseller. I no longer own this book. I got rid of it because I ended up giving it 2 stars. I didn't like it. I honestly think when it comes to a lot of the YA books that I have picked up in the recent years, I think if the circumstances were different, those circumstances would have to be me being in the age range that a lot of those books are geared towards. When I was younger and I was reading, I actually skipped past YA books. I went straight from middle grade books to adult books. I skipped right past the YA phase. And so, like, I've never read Hunger Games, Maze Runner, the Twilight, things like that. Like, I've never read those. I skipped right over them. And I think with this one, I was excited to read this one. It sounded interesting. A girl who's trained for 10 years to be a warrior, she gets screwed over, and now she's got to, like, reprove herself. And I was like, oh, this sounds cool. It sounds great. It's going to be so much fun. And it was like 80% romance and 20% plot. And I was like, and it ruined the book for me. And I think if I was in that young adult age range, which is, like teenagers to like, it's like that, like on the cusp of being an adult, like 18, 17, like when I read it, I think I would have enjoyed it more because I think I would have been more in the mindset of like, oh my God, that romance in this is so cool. It's so cool. It's so sweet. I love it so much. Whereas the person I am now, the age I'm now, I don't care about the romance. I don't. I wanted to know about the plot. I wanted to see this girl who had spent 10 years training to be a warrior, like actually do warrior stuff and not fall in love with the first guy that she met outside of her house. So yeah, that's the one I'm gonna go with. I think if I had been actually the age that this was geared towards, I would have enjoyed it a lot more. And that kind of goes in general for a lot of YA books that I try to read. Because I keep hoping I'm going to find, because there are some that I do like, as you saw. There's two in this list already. I keep trying. They're not all winners. Next we have Electrum, a 5-star prediction. Now for this one, I'm going with Foundry Side by Robert Jackson Bennett. I look at this and I just go, this is going to be 5 stars. I can feel it. I can feel it in my bones. But also, it's got inanimate objects that talk. And I like inanimate objects that talk. So definitely looking forward to that. I also heard that I think it's like a heist kind of thing. Other than that, I don't really know too much more about it. But all I know is when I had originally seen it on the shelves, I was like, I need to have that because it's going to be fantastic. It's 5 stars. Next, we have Chromium, a book rec that you DNF'd or sent you into a slump. And that's going to be The Red Knight by Miles Cameron. This was recommended to me through Goodreads, not a person. And I rage quit this book. 200 pages and I rage quit it. I have a very very aggressive review for it on Goodreads. Just so many things were just not okay with me about it. And I remember this was one of the ones that I tried to buddy read with my best friend because I've been trying to get her to read a fantasy buddy read with me, not just romance. And this was a horrendous pick. And so now she's been like scared to pick up fantasy books with me. And I'm like, they're not all like this. I swear they're not. So that is the one. It sent me into a major slump because I read it at I started at the beginning of January last year. And I DNF'd it within, I think, a week or whatever. And then, like I said, it was a rage quit. Like, I rage quit reading it. And for the rest of January, I could not pick up anything. It just completely ruined my reading. It's the first time a book has really just annihilated my reading. And I've been trying to sell the stupid book, and it won't move. I have it up for $2. Someone buy it already so I don't have to burn it. I hate it so much. Next, we have Nicrocell. I hope I said that right. A series that a friend recommended that you binged. So, surprisingly, I don't get a lot of people recommending me books to read. And it's probably because I have a very small circle of friends, and none of my actual friends read. But I never really have and I haven't really created close enough friendships with other book readers enough to where they're like, you have to read this series, and then I do, and I fall in love with it. I remember when I had first gotten into my bookstagramming and stuff, I had befriended a person on there. They're not active on there anymore, but they had recommended that I read the Six of Crows duology by Leigh Bardugo, and I remember reading the first one through the library, and I remember finishing it and the next day going to the library to get book 2 because I had to know what happened next. So I'm going to go with this one and say the Six of Crows duology by Leigh Bardugo. That is the one that I binged. I read them back to back. It's not often that I do that with a lot of series because I tend to take breaks in between them because I don't want to overwhelm myself. But yeah, I'm going to go with this one. So Aluminum, a book or series that left you hung over. Now, I actually had to ask the community what they mean by this because I was very confused as to what everyone was talking about when they said a book left them hungover. And my understanding of hungover is very different from other people. So what I had gathered from asking the community, what do they all mean? Everyone was like, a book that was so great and so good that when you finish it, you're just like, oh, I can't move on to another series yet. I'm so sad to have to be leaving these characters. That I don't do that. I don't do that. And I think a lot of it is because, when it comes to the term hungover, I associate negative things with it. So whenever I heard hungover, I assumed people were mad that the series was over, they were angry that it was over and now they can't move on to something else. That was not the case. Everyone's like, we're so happy, we're so excited that we just can't move on. And I'm like, that makes no sense in my brain. That makes no sense because, especially considering the fact that when I finish a book series that I really, really loved and I had so much fun and enjoyment with it, I'm excited to move on to my next book. My brain goes, oh my god, that last book was so good. Let's read another one. It's going to be just as good. That's what my brain does. I've never been to the point where I've been so excited that I finished it, but sad at the same time that I finished it that I couldn't move on to another series. Instead, because I associate negative things with hangovers, because I don't like them, it's why I don't drink. If a book leaves me feeling, then I can't move on to another book. And to me, that's what a hangover is. That's how I assumed that term was working, that the book was so bad, we just can't move on. But I was wrong. I was wrong. So I'm just going to answer this question in the reverse. A book that left me hungover in the negative aspect because, like I said, if I really like it, I'm excited to move on to the next one because I'm like, it's gonna be just as good. It's gonna be amazing. I'm gonna answer in the reverse, and I'm actually gonna go with the most recent one that I just read, and that will be Memories of Blood and Shadow. Now, I did not hate this book, but I also did not love this book. It was very mid for me, and it just created this feeling for me. And it made it very hard. It took me about 5 days to pick up something else and like really stick to it. And it's just because I was like about it, and my brain was like, our next book is going to be meh too. So yeah, that's my very long explanation in regards to hangovers and books. I'm opposite from you guys, I'm sorry. Next up, we have Duralum, a series you binge. I'm actually gonna go with one that I binged this year because I chose to do it all on my own, and that would be the Ice Planet Barbarian series by Ruby Dixon. I read all of these back to back to back to back to back to back to back. I read over 60 books in this series back to back. I read the first, I think maybe 10 by myself, and then my best friend like caught up and we read the rest of it all together. But yeah, 60 books back to back, all in the same world. And our last element is Laricium. I don't know. A book or series that got you into fantasy. So this is one of those questions where I don't feel like I can actually attribute books to my love for fantasy. There is a book, but I actually think the start of my love for fantasy came from my mother letting us watch the most unhinged fantasy things she could possibly imagine. Like this, you know, like things like Legend, Labyrinth, The Dark Crystal, Krull, Princess Bride. I know that one's not unhinged, but you know, like, she let us watch the weirdest fantasy things growing up, and I think it's because ultimately she was like, one of you four is gonna be an unhinged little goblin for fantasy. And that turned out to be me. But if I want to attribute a book to it, I think I'm gonna go with The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe by C.S. Lewis. This is my original copy. As you can see, it's honestly not in the worst shape. It is from 95, if you guys would like to know. That's how old this copy is. It's from 1995. But I remember reading this book over and over and over and over and over again, and just I loved it. I loved everything about it. Like, I was always like, where's my magic wardrobe? That's unfair. So I think between this book and then all of the unhinged fantasy things that my mother allowed us to watch when we were little, I think that's honestly where a lot of my start in my love for fantasy came from. I know that there is a lot of like religious Christian things in this that as a child went right over my head because we're not religious, and still not. But just looking at it from just a fantasy aspect of just talking lions, magic witches, wardrobes that you can go into and come into another land for, like, it's just, it was magic to me. So that's the answer I'm gonna go with for this one. So if you guys enjoyed this video and you want to see more, go ahead, subscribe, you know, like and comment all that stuff down below if you've read any of these or all that other stuff. If I pronounced a bunch of stuff wrong. But until next time, I will talk to you guys later. Bye!